The Patriots might have just got lucky. Okay, they pissed away their own luck in week 18 when they beat the Buffalo Bills and threw away the number 1 pick, and they might have just gotten lucky again. Kolton Miller, the left tackle for the Las Vegas Raiders, former first-round pick, very impressive tackle, although he's not made an all-pro team or anything like that, is holding out. He is not reporting to voluntary workouts for the Raiders because apparently he is searching for a new contract. Patriots, you might have just gotten the golden ticket to fall right into your lap. We talked all season long, not just about how awful this offensive line was, but about how you don't get these guys in free agency. You don't get top tier left tackles. You don't really get starting tier NFL left tackles in free agency. It just doesn't happen. And you actually got lucky in that Ronnie Stanley made it to free agency, but, well, not really, because he re-signed with the Ravens. And you were doubly unlucky because you didn't have anybody on the market that was an NFL starting caliber left tackle, and this is not a strong tackle draft at all. The number 1 prospect in the draft at tackle is probably an NFL guard. So this is an opportunity that you absolutely need to check in on. The fact that Kolton Miller wants out of Vegas, and it might only potentially cost you a couple of mid-level draft picks. I don't think it's going to cost you the number 4 pick in the draft. I doubt it. Maybe it's a second, maybe it's a third. If you're the Patriots, with a couple of third-round picks this year and with some opportunities to trade back into the end of the first round this year, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you use some of your other draft capital to get a 29-year-old starting left tackle? That is better than anything you've got right now. To me, it's a no-doubter. And if you do make that trade and you potentially extend Kolton Miller and give him the contract he's looking for, then that could change a lot of how you work the rest of the draft. It might make that number 4 pick a lot easier. And maybe it is easier to trade back. Maybe you don't have that pressure, that organizational fan pressure to hit exactly on number 4 with a guy you might be reaching for. By the way, Kolton Miller has some experience with Josh McDaniels. Of course, McDaniels was his head coach in Vegas a few years ago. And this is what Josh McDaniels had to say about him when he was still the head coach of the Raiders. Yeah, he's one of our best workers. There's no doubt about it. You can see why he's improved each year he's been in the NFL. He puts a lot of time and effort into it in the facility. He works really hard in the weight room, and he's in great condition. He studies hard. Oh, boy, this is hitting all the Patriots' heartstrings right here. This is Patriot Way 101, right? Quote, in order to be really good in this league, there's a lot of things you got to do well. And Kolton gives a great effort every day at everything that he's responsible for. There was mutual respect, both sides. Josh McDaniels loved Kolton Miller. Kolton Miller loved playing for Josh McDaniels. Kolton, you could do it again because the Patriots got the space. They'll give you the contract you want. Okay, there's not a lot of teams in the league that are about to give out a big-time commitment to a left tackle who has not made a Pro Bowl or an All-Pro. That's not to say you're not talented, but there's just not a lot of teams that will do that. The Patriots will do that. The Patriots are desperate enough to do that. And they know they can't go through another season with an offensive line that they just had. Drake May leaves games for concussion protocol twice. They can't have that again. They absolutely cannot. And a couple of those big hits he took this year were going outside the pocket, but he had to go outside the pocket a lot with this offensive line. The answer is not Vidarian Lowe, but it could be Kolton Miller. Now you might have to pay too much in the trade market as well because the Raiders know how desperate you are, and it's still early on in the process, and they know that you probably want to get this done before the draft, which is in a week. But if you do get this done, you've got all kinds of options when it comes to the first round of that draft. You know, we've already laid it out on this show before. Recommend checking those videos out on the channel that there's ways that the Patriots can trade back into the first round. There's a way that they can have 2 first-round picks come next Thursday. And there are some premium guys that might be available for some of their first pick in the second round. Their only pick in the second round. They have 2 third-round picks. So there's ways that they can have a couple of selections next Thursday night. And so what I mean by that is you can trade for Kolton Miller and then truly go for the best player on the board. because I know they've already said that. I know Elliott Wolf has said, yeah, best player. But they're going to draft Will Campbell, is what it looks like. And I don't know that Will Campbell is the best player available at number 4. I'm really high on the Jalon Walker pack. Okay. I'm conducting the Jalon Walker train at this point. I think he's a better player than Will Campbell. But you go out and you get a Kolton Miller, a guy who you know can be a starting left tackle in this league. Then maybe you can go and get Jalon Walker. Or maybe you don't like Walker as much and you want some offensive weapons. Then you've already got your left tackle. You don't need to reach on Will Campbell. You could trade back and get Tyler Warren from Penn State. I think that would be an awesome draft pick. I think whoever gets him is really getting a bargain because he could fall outside of the top 10. In fact, some mock drafts have Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State, going in the 20s. And if that is the case, by some divine providence, that is the case, the Patriots could draft someone at 4 and then trade back into the first round and potentially pick up Tyler Warren. That would be an absolute win. Kevin Costner draft day type situation. But there are some prospects here. I know there's been rumors that they like Matthew Golden, the wide receiver from Texas, who doesn't seem to have first-round size, but does have first-round productivity. So maybe you could trade into the 20s and get someone like Matthew Golden. Or maybe Ted McMillan is still somewhere there in the 20s. I don't love Ted McMillan. I don't love the Patriots drafting receiver at all, whether it's at the beginning or the end of the first round. They haven't done well in either of those drafting receivers historically. You know, Irving Fryer, Terry Glenn, all the way to N'Keal Harry being the last pick in the first round. I don't love that, but I think Todd McShay, guest of Rogue Media Sports Network, there we go, guest of the Pete Souza show yesterday, he said something good about Will Campbell. And he said, look, I know it's a top 5 pick. You don't want to use it on someone that could be a guard. But if you draft a receiver and they're a bust, you have a bust. If you draft a running back and they're a bust, they're a bust. If you draft Will Campbell and he's a bust at tackle, chances are he's probably going to be a really good guard. And so at least you have something, right? And we've seen that before with the Patriots. We've seen that on the offensive and defensive lines. Guys they thought were going to be, at one position, they end up thriving at another. Logan Mankins at guard. That's a good example there. Obviously, I think they had the foresight on this with Bill Parcells, but drafting Teddy Bruschi, who is a defensive lineman, and making him a really versatile linebacker. Same thing with Mike Vrabel. They pick him up from Pittsburgh as a special teamer who was a defensive end in college, and they say, no, you're going to play outside linebacker. And he becomes a borderline Hall of Famer at that position. So at least with Will Campbell, there's some fallback there. I just find it the things that happen with those teams and those moves is those teams were good. Bruschi's first year, they went to the Super Bowl. Vrabel's first year or second year with the Patriots, second year, I think, they won the Super Bowl. With Logan Mankins, they were already in the dynasty years. Okay, they just won the Super Bowl a few months before they drafted him. The difference is with this Patriots team, you're so far away from that you're going to have years of that on your resume of having a top 5 pick when you could a year in which you went into the final game of the season in the number 1 draft position, and instead you came out of that draft 3 months later with a guard at the number 4 pick. That's just it's a tough sell, man, and it's a bad look. If you are in the Super Bowl in 2 years, that's a different story, but it's a huge risk for me right now. And so the way I look at it, if you can go out and get Kolton Miller, you get a starting caliber NFL left tackle, you go and get him, a guy that your offensive coordinator already likes, and a guy that this left tackle already likes playing for in Josh McDaniels. If you go out and get that, you have all kinds of options when it comes to that first round pick. Okay, you can trade up if you still want to. You've got some capital to do that, and maybe get a Travis Hunter. More realistically, you can trade back. But either way, there are options galore if you go out and make this trade and sign a guy like Kolton Miller, and it could fix some of your biggest problems right away before you even have to send in the envelope for that first round pick in a week. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Is this the trade the Patriots need to make? Is this the good luck they have been waiting for? Let me know in the comment section. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Only about 10% of you guys watching are actually subscribed, so hit that subscription button. We're bringing you nothing but Boston sports content 5 days a week. We're live on YouTube every weekday, high noon Eastern time, and then we're available wherever you get your podcasts. Zach Burke keeps us on the air. I'm your host, Cam Stewart.